Thank you, audience, for tuning in for our very interesting fireside chat. But before I introduce our expert speakers, I'd once again like to remind all of you that this is an opportunity you have to connect with them right here. So please do send in questions. That's how we can really have an exchange of ideas and more. So you can send in questions for our speakers as we get set for our fireside chat on leadership approach, implementing innovative digital strategies to overcome operational challenges, boosting productivity and minimizing costs. We'll be discussing a lot of pointers, including cost reduction through cloud computing, improving security, gaining agility, and improving business interaction. Of course, cloud platform versus traditional technology platform. All that and more will be done by our moderator, Ms. Anirban Ghoshal, etinsights.com. And joining us, our expert speakers, a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Samson Kao, Executive Vice President, Asia Pacific, Dassault Systems. And may I also welcome Mr. Forum Mehta, APAC Chief InfoSec Officer, PayPal. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Over to you, Anirban.
Thank you, Isha. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us at the Cloud Strategy Summit. We hope to have a discussion today, positive discussion today about where cloud and digital transformation is going, in the future. So diving straight in, Samson, let me start with you. The pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation timeline for most businesses. As a leader in the information technology space, what are some of the trends that you're seeing across the APAC region when it comes to digital transformation? If you could highlight a few examples of success stories or failure stories that you're seeing.
Thank you, Anirban, for giving us the opportunity, and ET to give us the opportunity to Dassault Systèmes to talk about the trend of the digital transformation. Let me start by just give a word of what we are doing. So Dassault Systèmes, we are a global software company with 20,000 employees, 20,000 employees, and we provide software solutions that allow any of our customers to create innovative new product and services. So we are in the business of innovation for the last 40 years. In the business of supporting our customer for their innovation over the last 40 years. And you're right to say, Anirban, that the pandemic have really created an acceleration of the transformation, of the digital transformation. And we have witnessed this across most of the region that we have in Asia Pacific in 2020. Unfortunately, I think that this is really a health crisis for all the country. But what we see is that there is really a strong need from the industry, and especially from the manufacturing industry, to be able to connect, collaborate, co-develop, manufacture the product, keep the resilience on their design, engineering, and production, irrespective of the location. And in fact, what we can witness is that company which is quite traditional in the manufacturing space, like in Japan, or you have industry segment which is also very late in terms of transformations, such as construction or mining. We saw those industry coming up with digital transformation because there is a relevance for them to keep leveraging on the data to build the resilience. And moreover, as you know, we have acquired 2 years ago a company in the space of life science and healthcare, and it's about Medidata. And Medidata is also a company which is helping a lot during this pandemic time for all the clinical trial of the new vaccine. And the technology that they are using is fully leveraging on digital data and also about the cloud. And we'll come back later, I'm sure, on the how cloud can be an enabler for the digital transformation. That's what I want to give as a short perspective of what we are doing, what we are observing in Asia Pacific, Anirban.
Thank you, Samson. And before just I move to forum, Samson, one more follow-up question. What I mean, C-suite or CEOs or CFOs or anybody for that matter today are very necessary for successful implementation of digital transformation strategies. What role do you see the C-suite play when it comes to building or planning these digital information strategies, and how can they be successful by building a leadership connect?
I will just give you one simple example that it's also reflecting the trend of the industry. I'm taking the case of Dassault System because we are actually a company of 20,000. And we have to make sure that we are leading all this transformation from a digital perspective, making our company a digital enterprise. And when you look at this transformation, it's our vice chairman and CEO who is leading the transformation. Okay, and he decided to really let the operation managed by a dedicated executive. Okay, and the executive committee just dealing with the operation, and himself have dedicated and devoted all his time for the transformation. When I give the example of Dassault System, which is in the space of innovation, we see also talking to a lot of the C-suite and the CXO level that now the transformation, the digital transformation, is no longer a matter of just the cost, or the matter of technology. It's a matter also of how you want to digitalize your business process. I hope that I give you some clarity here on what we observe as well.
Yes, indeed. And I think more importantly, it's more about people, right? People, processes, and then data probably.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Samson. Moving over, thanks Forum again for joining us. It's a no-brainer today that cloud is probably has become a vehicle or one of the main components of digital transformation strategies, for all organizations. How do you envision the role of cloud and other frontier technologies when it comes to organizations looking to build long-term resilience, post the pandemic, post the new normal?
Thanks, Anirban. Nice to be here. And hopefully you guys are having a great event. So the way, from PayPal's perspective, as we like to refer ourselves as the oldest startup from a fintech perspective, so we complete about 20 years in the space with technology as a core foundation. What has been driving us, towards global adoption, providing our services. One thing that we take a lot of pride in is embracing, exactly as you mentioned, the technology advancements that come out and allow us to build the kind of resilience, that enable the trust that our customers, both from a consumer perspective as well as merchants perspective, have in the services that we offer. Specifically, I think just connecting back to something that Samson mentioned, if you look at Asia Pacific, today we represent a little bit more than 50% of the global internet population, and it's rising faster than anywhere else in the world, right? If you look at most of the studies, say more than 80% of Asia Pacific population will have smartphone by 2025, more than 80%, which is amazing. To enable that, technologies like cloud, when it comes to offering services, 5G, IoT devices, there's already amazing adoption of how IoT-based technologies, whether from a transportation perspective and supply chain, consumer electronics, is transforming individual lives. And it's extremely critical to make sure that the design and the effort that we put in the infrastructure at every layer of the infrastructure that enable these services to come in and ultimately make lives better, a standard of living a little bit better for consumers, takes resilience as its core mission. And resilience has multiple aspects to it, right? Clearly, security is extremely important, availability being the primary objective. With everything going digital, you have to know how will, once, let's say, digital finance and payments come in, how does a small merchant who has started adopting or taking payments continue to operate their business when something happens in terms of availability incidents. And all of that ultimately combined with data and analytics allows businesses to offer those personalized customer experiences that ultimately make digital so much better than analog. I think, in a lot of ways, and not try to diminish the impact that COVID has had across the world in the grief that it has caused, but it has, on the technology side, been an enabler, being a catalyst in improving the adoption of technology mediums. I mean, we talk about how the young people are taking on education courses, doing their classes online, but you look at silver tech and golden generation folks as well have started doing online shopping, reading news, and doing their day-to-day chores primarily online. And it is extremely important for businesses that offer these services to keep that in mind. If they want to have loyalty, they have to make sure trust is a key value proposition, and it comes to doing the right investments, making the right investments in the resilience aspect, security, compliance, and so on and so forth.
Throwing it back to Samson here, how do you, Samson, think that cloud could play a role in sort of unlocking more business value and helping companies become future-proof?
I think that let me bring this way. As I mentioned earlier, we have actually during the pandemic, we have seen that we need to, most of the company have to collaborate no matter where is their physical location. And this is very important because I think this is only where the cloud technology and the cloud computing will help, is that you can connect wherever you are. That's the first thing. The second thing that we also learn is more from the small and medium company that with whom we are working in India, and usually it show a lot why the cloud is important for them. First of all, when we work with automotive suppliers such as Sanda Industries. They are in the locks system, in the stamping part. We work with Suprajit Engineering, which is also doing all the cabling within the car. And the way they look at the cloud-based platform, our cloud-based platform is the cost of ownership. Okay, because the adoption starts by the fact that you have to have effective cost in terms of the way you want to deploy the technology, and when we talk about the cost of ownership, is about how you are going to invest in hardware, how you are going to ensure that you have the up-to-date software that you want to run for your operation, and a lot of those constraint, it's now with the cloud technology, it's being covered. Okay. The second thing, which is the most important, and we discover working with them, is that when you have to have all your data safeguard on the cloud for your operation, for your engineering, it's a kind of security for them to have those data somewhere in the safe, in a vault, so that you avoid people backing up those data and have the risk of having those data leaked out to the competition. And this is very important because we always look at the cloud in the opposite way. Is how the cloud provider can provide you the security, but the things that we discover is that our user is not looking at the security of those data. They are looking at how they can protect their own data for any of those people within the company to intentionally or unintentionally will grab those data. So that's that's what we have seen. The other thing that I'm also I would say, agree with the forum's comment is that a cloud-based technology, in terms of learning, in terms of user interface, in terms of user adoption, is very easy. Okay, and this is the reason why I think that all this user adoption is very important when you can provide a cloud-based software, because you have to connect from any mobile devices.
So Samson, just to sort of conclude what you said was that, cloud helps companies be agile, scalable and what they want, and it's also very easily deployable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. The right term is this agility, because just to bounce on your comment, I think that this is the reason why when you look at the startup with whom we are working extensively, the startup actually like very much to use the cloud-based platform, because they need to be agile. They need to feel that the platform can really help them to create an impact on their ideation process. And we have case also, it's remind me a case that we have in India with this company doing drone called General Aeronautics, and for them it's the agility for them to create a multi-purpose drone only with a cloud and with the cloud-based platform that we offer to them. They can actually give this ability and this agility to their team, because most of the time the team that you see, the people that you see in those startups, they are multidisciplinary. Okay, that's the reason why they need to have this kind of role-based product in order for them to adapt themselves to the different domain they have to cover in the startup. That's what I want to add.
Thank you so much, Samson. Moving over from, I know to the point that you made earlier, you mentioned a very key word called trust, and I guess the pandemic has also changed consumer behavior, consumer expectation, and I guess there is an increased expectation of trust into products of any kind, especially your sector, BFSI, across the APAC. So if you could sort of take a microscope to some of the cybersecurity expectations that you're seeing, from consumers, and how, as an organization, you're building security ground up, keeping in mind, the next levels of usage and also the privacy regulations that are either already coming or are coming in.
Sure. But I think a really good question and a good, everything that kind of Samson mentioned at a high level, as a business has, let's say, finally decided that they want to embrace cloud as a platform to offer their services, then how do you ensure, to your point, that trust is not just maintained, but as they acquire more customers, it continues to grow and become the value differentiation for them. Let me kind of, break it down into three aspects that you mentioned. So primarily, if you look at availability, and it's kind of timely. So last week, there was an incident in a France cloud service provider, OVH, where a fire took down their entire data center, and a lot of the websites were suffering. Now, either you can look at it and say, look, cloud doesn't solve the problem, or you can look at it and say, only organizations that in fact had cloud-based, were embracing cloud, would have had the backup that Samson mentioned, or the ability to quickly turn on their services in a geographically distributed region where the same provider with the same infrastructure could quickly turn on those services. So there is lots of aspects around availability that cloud offers to a business, but it's not a small challenge, right? For an organization that has their entire stack developed on traditional technologies to transform and to migrate their workloads over to the cloud. So there needs to be obviously a lot of work, and we've been on this journey for quite some time, probably one of the first ones when it comes to payment service providers, starting with dev, then test, and now finally from this year onwards, starting to offer some of our production workloads over cloud. The second probably I touch on is compliance aspects. So there's lots of things. What technology and the connectivity does is allows businesses to go beyond their national borders, to go beyond their city borders, to offer their services around the world by enabling partners like us, like the Salt, and so many others that can truly help embrace the power of technology. And they don't have to worry about the right software or the right payment mechanisms that can allow them to grow their business. Well, how do you do that when there are different and disparate local regulations that some of them require local storage, some of them require a different emphasis on privacy, and you have to have the right type of experiences. Once again, for us, it has cloud is the one that has enabled us to meet local regulations in India while offering or continuing to offer the same services in 200 plus countries. And the last piece is the actual customer experience, where for us, where trust comes from primarily detecting and preventing fraud from happening in payment transactions. So today we take less than 0.3 of a second to decide who you are, what you want to do, and should we allow that to happen normally? Should we throw in a new challenge? Should we, block you and report you to somewhere? Now this, while we want to achieve this KPI of having incredibly fast experience, we also want to maintain our position as the best in the industry in terms of the fraud rates, loss rates for any kind of fraud, because that's clearly a business KPI that we would have. But all of that is done because we have now the power of technology where we can focus on our core business, which is payments, risk, and fraud, while not worrying about the hardware, the stacks that ultimately make all of these things available. So, again, we have lots of examples how partnering with the right cloud providers, having that right strategy, whether it's hybrid, whether it is public for certain types of services, whether it is private for others, is extremely important for enterprises to truly understand their business, decide what is their focus, how do they want to start migration of their experiences, what type of environments go there, and then focus and ensure that each of their primary business goals, whether it is availability, security, compliance, all of them are ticked on as they go through their own journey.
Thank you so much, Forum. Samson, do you want to add anything to what Forum said? Especially, I know you touched upon CADs and IPs, while answering our last question. Do you want to add something to what Forum said?
I think that Forum is right to say that when we talk about cloud, the compliance to the regulation is the most important. Okay, and I know that there are a lot of specification to be done, whether the data have to reside in country, and I know that we have been working with government organization, whether it's in India or outside of India, and all this data sovereignty, the in-country, the residency of the data, the way you want to protect the data, those are, and because at the end you have the privacy part. Okay, you have the privacy part, and this is the reason why you have to make sure that whatever you do, we have to be compliant, and as Forum mentioned, is that you have to come with a different type of offer, whether you want to leverage a public cloud with the right provider, but making sure that you have the data in country. You have to make sure that you have a strong disaster management system when you select the cloud provider, because the incident that Forum mentioned is typical of what the consumer, the user of the cloud technology have to ask and request for. And the other side of the offer is how you want to have a cloud which is private cloud, where you want to make sure that you know exactly where the data are, and you want to make sure that against this type of offer, we have to offer also the elasticity of the infrastructure, because as you know, at the end it's about the data, the volume of the data that you have to safeguard. And this is very important that when we have to look at the all this cloud technology and advancement, we have to be flexible also in terms of offer that we come along with the stack of application.
Okay, thank you, Samson. Moving on, Forum, from a very PayPal perspective, how are you looking to create new customer experiences for consumers, and then how PayPal is working towards building more awareness for consumers when it comes to cybersecurity?
True. So let me start with consumers in terms of just basic awareness. As I mentioned, over the last year, while there was pandemic, there was the adoption of technology services, specifically in payments and the more regularly used services has just completely gone through the roof. I mean, on an average, we were onboarding more than 10 million consumers every quarter. Towards the end, we ended up onboarding about 70 million consumers just in 2020. Now, when that happens, you could imagine that while consumers are coming up, obviously the attackers are looking for newer ways, newer targets to scam them, to fraud them, to find ways in which they can lure them into sharing their credentials, which can then ultimately be used to, steal either their identity or their money. Within the first 3 months of the pandemic, in fact, we saw just COVID-based websites, increase just the registration of COVID-related websites increased by more than 20 times. On an average, you would have about 1,000 or so registrations happening per day, and that went to a few thousands. So what is important for us is to make sure, especially for the silver tech population, especially the folks that we truly are, our core mission at PayPal is to democratize financial services, right? To make, to pay, to move money for everybody easily available and do it in a secure fashion. So for them, it starts with the journey starts with education, sending them advisories, making them aware of what a typical email looks like, what we will ask or we will never ask, so that they can be a bit more suspicious about not giving out their credential or their OTPs or not clicking on suspicious SMSs that they receive. But that's just the start of the journey. On the other side, it is working closely with the regulators, working closely with the industry partners in adoption of good technology protocols and frameworks. So you may have heard of DMARC as a anti-phishing framework that PayPal innovated and then made it an industry standard. Last year, we worked with Ribbit, which is the IT arm of RBI, to do a webinar for all the BFSI sectors and in getting them aware of why DMARC adoption is extremely important within the sector. And there is amazing commitment from the financial services sector and the regulators and CERT-In and others to make sure at least email, which is the primary communication channel, kind of stays, as secure as possible by businesses, email providers adopting these type of strong best practices. On the other side, it is the merchants and others who have to decide how do they value security. So whether it is certifications like PCI that they have to ensure themselves, or to find partners whom they can outsource, the provision of how payments happens on their system, or supply chain happens, or storage of data happens, or privacy is extremely important for them to also understand why or how new technologies, new innovation are coming in from a defense perspective to thwart the types of attacks, whether it is denial of service, whether it is the new breach against, again, Microsoft Exchange that came out. In some sense, it's a poster child advertisement for businesses to move to cloud-based email service providers. So there is all of this is important for the businesses to understand why, as they take their business to a digital first type of a value proposition, it cannot happen unless security is the core part of that strategy, and you're making the right type of investments in those areas. From PayPal specifically, if you look at it, late last quarter, we announced, not late last year, we announced how in some of the services, some of the countries that we offer our services in, cryptocurrency buying, selling through our wallet in the US available. Now, we don't necessarily think that is the end goal. The idea is that there is a lot of choice that is being made available to consumers, working closely with the regulators, complying with all the local laws. How can we ensure that the way the consumers want to drive this freedom, the expression of payments that they want to make, and ultimately whether it is, a central bank digital currency that comes out of certain markets, that PayPal can be that partner in enabling those services. Again, whether P2P, again, India is one of the biggest recipients for our Zoom services, for money transfers, and how do you enable those type of services? How do you look at partnering with the India stack from identity to banking to UPI and enabling driving those services, not just within India, but primarily our value prop is to make sure that Indians anywhere in the world can transact with the same account with different types of services, whether it is moving money, whether it is making a transaction, whether it is purchasing other aspects as well.
I think, Forum, you've read my mind, and you've also sort of answered the next question that I had for you. We are sort of running out of time. So let me pose my last question of this session to Samson before we sort of break. Samson, how can companies use cloud or other digital strategies to loop in maturity in their process and design innovation, while also keeping in mind, goals such as compliance, environment, which are obviously becoming, more important for corporates and other stakeholders today?
It's very difficult and it's very vast if I have to address this one. But as I mentioned, and I try to be short in my reply to this very, very relevant question, Anirban. I think, as I mentioned earlier in my discussion, when it comes to a digital transformation and how to leverage cloud as an enabler, I think that it's the top executive of the company who should drive the adoption of cloud as a mean to succeed in one of the means to succeed on for their digital transformation. That's point number one. Point number two, I think that this is what you mentioned about the people and about the adoption, because we realize that all this new generation that come up, they are naturally online, they are naturally digital citizen, right? And we have the same observation also when, because we are in the business also of supporting in India a lot of education program and design contest. And we realized during the pandemic last year that most of those hundreds of thousands students is using our technology on the cloud. Naturally, because they cannot go to the school, they cannot connect to the computer at school, at their classroom. They naturally access to all the training, all the certification, all the work they have to do directly with the cloud technology. So they are already fluent in terms of cloud adoption. Okay, cloud technology adoption. The second thing is very amazing is that we used to organize design contests. And we have one of our entity dealing with CSR called Dassault System Foundation, and we usually organize a lot of design contests for the students to be well versed when it comes to design. And we organize those design contests online by forming the team from different schools, and we realized that the people, the students, they can work collaboratively without being knowing each other, and they can collaborate and using the cloud technology naturally. So this fluency, I would say, is one of the key vector of acceleration of digital adoption in India. Because when you look traditionally on the India manufacturing, I remember from some of the report that less than 30% of the Indian manufacturing company is thinking of adopting a digital transformation and looking at cloud. Okay, and you see the in one side you have the new workforce pushing for this digital transformation because they are born in the digital area, and at the same time you have the company which is still contemplating the change. So I think that the booster is there. The booster is there, and I think that looking at, as you say, it's more the people who will help to drive this transformation. Okay.
I guess we're out of time, gentlemen. But just to conclude, I think both of your key messages, would be that cloud is actually a no-brainer for companies, and cloud is a vehicle which people have to use to sort of, when they think about security, when they think about digital transformation, it is just smart, a smart decision, as Forum said, as to which cloud service provider you choose, whether you want to keep it multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, or you want to put it on entirely on public cloud. That's a decision for the company depending on the process. So thank you again, gentlemen, for having this engaging conversation. Thank you for helping us with all those insights. Over to you, Isha.